The Curse of Yu Menglong. Why China's elite are falling, one by one. It began with silence. There was no warning, no goodbye, just a headline that said Yu Menglong was gone. It was called an accident, a fall from a high-rise building in Beijing. Nothing more. Within hours, every post about him vanished. The studio said nothing. The media turned away. But something did not feel right. Because when the truth dies that fast, it does not stay buried for long. Then the whispers started. A director suddenly lost control online. A producer deleted everything. A billion-dollar company collapsed overnight. And then something far stranger happened. 9 generals, all loyal to China's highest power, were purged within days of one another. Was it a coincidence, or the beginning of something that even the powerful could not contain? Every clue pointed back to one place, a gray art museum in Beijing, hidden behind locked doors and unmarked corridors. That is where some believe Yu spent his last hours. That is where the curse began. Now, months later, the system that tried to erase him is starting to tear itself apart. Celebrities vanish. Stocks crash. Commanders fall. And through it all, one question remains. Was Yu Menglong's death really an accident, or the spark that set off the quietest revenge in modern Chinese history? It started with a breakdown, public, erratic, and impossible to ignore. On October 18th, director Fang Li, one of the 17 suspects quietly listed online after Yu Menglong's death, suddenly snapped. He went onto social media in a furious storm, calling those who questioned him despicable people hiding in the dark. He dared them to show evidence, to use their real names, to confront him directly. And then, as quickly as it appeared, his post vanished, along with his entire account. For weeks, Fang Li had said nothing. He had been silent since that night in Beijing, the night witnesses claim he left the city in a rush, and flew to Chongqing only hours after Yu's fall. But silence has a strange power in China. The longer it lasts, the more people start to listen. When Fang finally spoke, the internet exploded. His anger did not calm suspicion, it confirmed it. What followed was chaos. Investigators and online sleuths began tracing connections that no one was supposed to see. Fang's wife, Zhang Wei, is the executive director of Shenlin Film and Media, a company tied to another figure in the case, Du Chang, also an executive there. Suddenly, the web between them began to look less like coincidence and more like coordination. Rumors surfaced that the Qihu Art Museum, a quiet, gray building in Chaoyang district, was not just a place for exhibitions, but possibly a holding site, a private property used for something far darker. The museum, owned by Qihu Industrial Corporation, was said to have connections to municipal authorities, the kind of backing only powerful insiders could provide. People tried to get inside. A few even claimed they made it through a side door at night. They said the air underground was heavy and still, as if something terrible had once happened there. They did not go further. They could not. As fear spread through the industry, others began to panic. Private messages leaked. Weibo accounts disappeared. Agents, managers, and minor producers all started scrubbing their online traces. They said they were afraid of online slander. But the timing told another story. They were not afraid of lies. They were afraid of the truth being pieced together. The panic was not limited to individuals. Even media companies began distancing themselves from one another. Certain programs were quietly pulled from schedules. Entertainment portals that had once praised Yu's career now refused to print his name. It was as if the entire system had agreed to erase him. Yet every act of erasure only made the mystery louder. By late October, whispers reached foreign platforms. Anonymous posts from people claiming to be industry insiders suggested something darker still, that what happened to Yu was never spontaneous, that he had seen or heard something meant to stay buried, and that some of the people now panicking were the ones who helped cover it up. Whether those claims are true remains uncertain, but one thing is clear. Since that night in Beijing, the fear has not stopped spreading. Directors, producers, even actors once thought untouchable are now watching what they say, deleting what they post, and pretending not to know what everyone else is whispering. Because in this story, the silence is not just strange. It is survival. At the edge of Beijing's Chaoyang district, surrounded by modern glass towers and luxury apartments, stands a strange building that does not belong. Locals call it the Qihu Art Museum, a name that sounds elegant, but the structure itself feels anything but. It is made of raw gray concrete, sharp corners, narrow corridors, and no visible windows. Even in daylight, it looks like something built to keep people out or to keep something in. According to online investigations, Qihao Industrial Company, the company behind the museum, has ties to several municipal departments. Its records, though public, are incomplete. The names of executives appear, vanish, and reappear under new titles. But what really drew attention was not its paperwork. It was the belief that this building, this silent gray fortress, was where Yu Menglong spent his last days. In early October, a few daring netizens claimed they tried to sneak inside. They found an unmarked entrance behind a service alley. Beyond it, a flight of stairs led underground. The walls were concrete, and the air was thick and cold. One person said their flashlight caught a glimpse of something metal, like a camera mount bolted to the wall. Another swore they heard a faint echo, like someone breathing behind them. They did not stay long enough to find out. Around the same time, whispers of a video began to surface on Chinese forums. It was a file allegedly taken from that very basement. It was said to show Yu Menglong alive but barely recognizable, bruised, weak, and surrounded by shadows. The rumor claimed the clip was being sold on the dark web for $100,000. Each copy was supposedly embedded with a digital watermark to trace the buyer. Anyone who tried to leak it would be identified immediately. No one has ever proven the video exists, but the story alone was enough to send shockwaves across the internet. Screenshots, audio fragments, and blurred stills appeared briefly before being deleted. In one supposed snippet, a man's voice could be heard saying, "What is the big deal if a man bleeds a little?" Others described the sound of a door slamming and a scream that was cut short. True or not, the rumor became something larger than evidence. It became a symbol of fear, of censorship, of what happens when a story becomes too dangerous to tell. Meanwhile, those connected to the museum stayed silent. There were no public tours and no official statements. The last exhibition listed on its website was from months before Yu's death. Even that page is gone now. Satellite images show a courtyard below ground level, a sunken plaza that was once part of an old industrial depot. From above, it looks like a wound cut into the earth. And deep beneath it, people imagine a corridor lit by harsh white light, the same color seen in many of Yu's live streams before he vanished. Fans analyzed reflections in his water bottle, the sound of the room's acoustics, even the gray wall behind him. Many believe those live streams were not from his home, but from that basement. But the most chilling part is not the building itself. It is what came next. Because not long after these theories spread, accounts posting about the Qihu Museum started disappearing one by one. Entire discussion threads were wiped. Keywords were banned. Even private messages vanished mid-sentence. Someone or something was cleaning up. By then, people were no longer just talking about Yu anymore. They were talking about the system that seemed to protect those who might have hurt him. And in that silence, the dark web rumor took on a life of its own, transforming from gossip into a kind of collective nightmare. Because in China's digital age, the truth does not just disappear. It sinks deeper and darker into the parts of the internet where light never reaches. And somewhere in that darkness, people still whisper that the Qihu Museum was never just a museum. It was a secret built in plain sight, and the key to a story the world was never meant to see. On October 14th, a faint voice echoed from a dark studio in Taipei. The screen flickered. A group of paranormal investigators from Channel 204, a small Taiwanese television show, claimed they were trying something few dared to attempt, to contact the spirit of Yu Menglong. They placed an EVP recorder on the table, the same device ghost hunters use to capture sound frequencies beyond human hearing. When they asked, "When will your case be brought to light?" a faint answer came back. It said, "October." Then, barely audible, another word followed. 18. At first, people dismissed it as coincidence. But days later, that same date, October 18th, became the day director Fang Li lost control online. It was the day the panic truly began. Then came another voice. Not from the dead, but from across the world. A British psychic named Ty Williams uploaded a video to her channel claiming she had seen visions of Yu's spirit. Her warning was careful, almost apologetic. "Take this as entertainment," she said. "But I feel his story is not over, and those who hurt him will soon face their own ending." The video went viral overnight, and suddenly thousands began to wonder what would happen if the curse was not just superstition. Ty spoke about Song, an actress once close to Yu. She claimed Song was already facing karmic retribution, losing endorsements, being unfollowed by other celebrities, and quietly blacklisted by studios. Ty described her as living in denial, protected by power she no longer controlled. Then came the line that silenced her viewers. "You may be high up now," she said, "but the horse you are riding will throw you down." In China, these words spread like wildfire, even though they were never officially published. People began connecting every sudden downfall and every new scandal to what they called Menglong's curse. They did not mean ghosts. They meant the invisible law of consequence, the idea that you can hide the truth, but not its price. Online fans began calling Yu the gentle one with a spine of steel. They believed he had tried to fight back, to expose something bigger, and that his death had set a kind of spiritual chain reaction into motion. Across Weibo and Bilibili, users posted poems, candle icons, and coded messages like "October Speaks." Each time the posts went viral, they disappeared within hours. Some say it was the government censoring superstitious rumors. Others believe it was fear, not of ghosts, but of what the metaphor really meant, that even the untouchable are not immune to collapse. Psychic or not, Ty's words seemed to predict the unraveling that followed. Executives fell ill. Investors pulled out. Entire studios faced bankruptcy. Even Mango TV's empire began to tremble, losing over $1.7 billion in just a few weeks. But what scared people most was not the idea of a curse. It was the fact that the pattern made sense. Everyone who had silenced Yu, abandoned him, or profited from his pain was now falling one by one. No one could prove the connection. Yet, in a country where truth and myth often blur, the difference hardly matters. Because sometimes what we call a curse is just history finding its balance in its own quiet, merciless way. Before Yu Menglong became a household name, he was just another dreamer standing under bright lights. In 2013, he joined the show Superboy, singing his way through the rounds with a calmness that made him stand out. He was not the loudest or the flashiest, but he had something most did not have: quiet conviction. That same year, he signed with Tianyu Media, a talent agency that promised to turn him into a star. At first, it looked like a dream. The company housed many of China's biggest idols, backed by deep connections to Hunan TV and Mango Media. They had the resources, the influence, the power to decide who rises and who disappears. He was young, ambitious, and grateful. But over time, he began to realize that every opportunity came with invisible chains. By 2015, he had his breakout role in Go, Princess Go, a quirky drama that became an overnight phenomenon. For the first time, Yu saw what fame really looked like and what it cost. Soon, his contract was extended under new terms. They were harsher, longer, and nearly impossible to escape. To leave Tianyu, he would have had to pay a 200 million RMB penalty, an amount no artist could afford. Meanwhile, Tianyu Media began changing direction. Its music division was quietly abandoned. Instead, the company poured money into drama production, brand partnerships, and talent control. At the center of that web stood a pair of powerful figures, Li Dong and Li Ruigong, names that most of the public never hear but every insider knows. Li Dong, the daughter of Li Changchun, a former Politburo Standing Committee member, and Li Ruigang, a former political official turned media tycoon, controlled a vast empire through CMC Capital, the China Media Capital Group. Their portfolio was staggering. They had investments in IQIYI, Bilibili, Weibo, NetEase Cloud Music, and even Mango TV itself. Through these networks, Tianyu was not just a talent agency. It was a system, one that could decide an artist's fate with a single call. I was trapped inside it. His fame grew, but his freedom shrank. He wanted to start his own studio. Fans even encouraged it. But the penalty clause made that impossible. The contract did not just own his performances. It owned his name, his image, his time, and even his silence. By 2021, insiders noticed he looked tired, thinner, and quieter. He avoided interviews. He started live streaming from strange, colorless rooms. Fans thought it was an artistic choice. Now many wonder if it was something else. Around that same time, CMC's empire expanded overseas. In February 2024, it invested in CAA, the world's largest talent management agency in the United States. Through Li Ruigang, it gained direct access to Hollywood's elite circles. From Beijing to Los Angeles, the same invisible strings pulled the same marionettes. But even the strongest systems eventually break. When Coco Lee, another artist connected to the same entertainment network, publicly accused producers of corruption on The Voice of China, she died soon after. Officially, it was ruled a suicide. To the public, it was a tragedy. To insiders, it was a warning. After Yu's death, that warning turned into panic. People began drawing lines between Tianyu, Mango, CMC, and the deaths that followed. Suddenly, the industry's golden empire did not look invincible anymore. It looked infected. The very people who once believed they could control every outcome now faced a problem they could not erase, the loss of control itself. Yu's story became more than a mystery. It became a mirror held up to an entire industry built on power and silence. And the reflection staring back was not fame. It was fear. Because in a world where everything is owned, even a man's final breath can become someone else's property. As China's entertainment world unraveled, the tremors reached places no one expected, the very heart of Beijing's power. What began as a celebrity's mysterious death was now echoing through corridors lined with soldiers, officials, and fear. On October 17th, during the week of the fourth plenary session, a single broadcast from CCTV's military channel sent the country into quiet chaos. The anchor's tone was measured. The words were heavy. 9 generals, all loyal to Xi Jinping, had been expelled from the Communist Party and handed over for prosecution. The screen listed the names one by one. He Weidong, Miao Hua, He Hongjun, Wang Xuan, Lin Xiangyang, Qin Shuang, Yuan Huaji, Wang Haobin, Wang Chunning. Each was a man once untouchable, now erased. Officially, it was about disciplinary violations and massive corruption. But inside China, people whispered another explanation, that the purge was part of the karmic fallout from Yu Menglong's death. It sounded irrational, yet it spread faster than any official statement. Because in a country where superstition is banned, few things are feared more than bad fate. Some claimed that Yu's death had disturbed something sacred, a balance of destiny that even the most powerful could not escape. Others drew connections to Xi's own misfortunes, calling it the unraveling of his dragon vein. They referenced the Qinling Mountains, long believed to hold China's spiritual lifeline. In 2022, a massive tunnel had been drilled through its base as part of the South-North Water Diversion Project, an engineering feat the government celebrated, but one that ancient geomancy saw as a fatal wound to Xi's energy. Now, with his inner circle collapsing, those whispers returned. Was it politics or punishment? And then there was the photograph. On the same day the generals fell, a man believed to be Qin Gong, the long-vanished former foreign minister, appeared in an image taken at the Qihu Art Museum, the same building many believed was Yu's final prison. He was said to be attending an event for the Beijing International Music Festival, smiling faintly, surrounded by cameras. But for 2 years he had been missing, rumored dead, purged, or worse. His reappearance in that place on that date felt like a message. If it was true, it meant the cracks were spreading through every layer of the state. Not just censorship, not just media, but the entire machinery of power itself. Some analysts interpreted the chaos differently. They said it was factional warfare and internal cleansing before the next wave of reforms. But to the millions still haunted by Yu Menglong's story, it felt like something deeper, the curse moving upward. It was not just the industry burning anymore. It was the system that allowed it to exist. The downfall of 9 generals, the silence of state media, the re-emergence of ghosts thought long gone, together they painted a portrait of a regime that could bury scandals but not consequences. And in that silence, one detail stood out. In a private message that circulated before being deleted, someone claiming to be a mid-level CCTV employee wrote, "This is bigger than entertainment. Some people are being punished for things we cannot speak of." Everything began on September 11th. Whether it was truth or theater, the story had taken on a life of its own. It was no longer about one actor, but about a nation caught between belief and control. Because when a system builds its power on silence, every buried secret becomes a ticking clock. And sometimes it only takes one name, Yu Menglong, to start the countdown. In the end, every story that China tries to bury seems to find its way back through whispers, screenshots, and fragments of deleted truth. Yu Menglong was supposed to be another forgotten name, another accident written off in 12 hours. But instead, his silence became louder than any official statement. Months have passed, and yet his shadow still stretches across Beijing's skyline, over studios shuttered, generals purged, and empires losing billions. Even those who mock the idea of a curse now speak more quietly, as if afraid to tempt whatever force might still be listening. Because whether you believe in fate or not, something has clearly changed. The system that once silenced the weak is now choking on its own secrets. From the basements of art museums to the boardrooms of billion-dollar corporations, from live stream rooms to the corridors of power, one truth remains. Every empire built on fear eventually fears itself. And maybe that is what this story has become, not just about an actor's death, but about the ghost that power creates when it refuses to face its own reflection. The name Yu Menglong has become more than a headline. It is a mirror, one that the powerful can no longer look into without seeing themselves. Because in a country that worships control, there is nothing more terrifying than the one thing they cannot control, the truth.